In 2016, a joint military raid by 5 nations stormed a desert compound in northern Mali. Their target, a man known only as Rami, real name Dragan Vukojevic, a ghost arms dealer linked to wars across 3 continents. The mission ended in blood. Bodies were found, but not his. For 3 years, the world believed he was dead, until a Romanian taxi driver, Cristian Voicu, working a quiet shift near a private airstrip, picked up a man with no name, no luggage, and eyes he couldn't forget. This is the story of the man who vanished, and the driver who brought him down. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. We always love seeing how far this story travels. In the early hours of June 12, 2016, an elite international strike team prepared to carry out one of the most important operations in modern intelligence history. Codenamed Operation Iron Falcon, the mission aimed to capture or kill a man known only as Rami, an arms trafficker considered so dangerous that 5 countries had combined resources to bring him down. The CIA, MI6, Mossad, France's DGSE, and Nigeria's National Intelligence Agency, NIA, each sent their top personnel. The location was a suspected arms facility in the Kidal region of northern Mali, a known smuggling hub near the Algerian border. Satellite intel and drone footage had confirmed unusual activity, armed guards, shipments in unmarked trucks, and a convoy linked to Rami's old network. After months of coordination, dozens of operatives from the Joint Interception Task Force 9, JITF-9, were on the ground. What they didn't know was that someone had already warned Rami. The mission fell apart almost as soon as it began. At 3:17 a.m., a drone's feed went dark. Seconds later, one of the lead vehicles hit a buried mine. Gunfire echoed through the desert, and the facility burst into flames. By 3:45 a.m., half the team had been pinned down, including a British MI6 agent, Colin Rice, and Nigerian field commander, Major Larissa Nwosu. Inside the compound, rooms were still burning as they searched for their target. They found bodies, 6 in total, but none matched Rami's profile. One corpse wore a coat similar to his known wardrobe and had facial injuries that made identification difficult. For hours, they believed it might be him. But by the end of the day, fingerprint scans revealed the body belonged to a Sudanese logistics officer with no criminal background. Rami had vanished, no digital signals, no thermal trail, and no voice intercepts. It was as if he'd walked through fire and disappeared into smoke. The fallout was immediate. Governments that had trusted the intelligence began blaming one another. France accused the CIA of faulty satellite data. MI6 suspected a leak within the NIA. Mossad pulled 2 of its operatives back to Tel Aviv under emergency orders. All communications related to Operation Iron Falcon were locked behind classified doors. In arms trafficking circles, silence took over. Online forums where weapons brokers once shared codes and schedules went dark overnight. Supply lines tied to Rami's shipments collapsed. Dealers operating under his flag went into hiding. Some were found dead in abandoned cars in Lebanon and Turkey. Others vanished without a trace. By July, most agencies had declared him either dead or buried so deep he was untraceable. One Interpol memo called it the cleanest disappearance by a high-value fugitive since Carlos the Jackal. But inside closed rooms in Geneva, London, and Abuja, not everyone was convinced. The story didn't feel finished. Whispers of betrayal crept into every meeting. Colonel Hafiz El Mahdi, an Algerian intelligence asset who had helped set up drone coverage in Kidal, disappeared 2 days after the failed raid. An anonymous tip to Mossad claimed that Rami had paid a $1.8 million bribe to a handler in the DGSE. Internal investigations were launched, and one DGSE tech officer was quietly removed. In Abuja, Major Nwosu began reviewing all comms logs from the week before the raid and found that one encrypted line went live for 6 minutes the night before the team deployed. That line had been dormant for months, a potential mole. Even among allies, trust faded. Rumors spread that Rami had not only escaped but had staged the whole facility as a decoy. Some believed he had planted the bodies himself. Others thought he had known every move before it happened, as if he were watching the operation from the inside. Then came the sign that shook everything. In early 2017, Nigerian Border Patrol agents seized a truck in the north of the country. Inside were 30 assault rifles, still wrapped in their manufacturer's plastic. But what caught everyone's attention was the small triangle symbol burned into the stocks, the same red mark found on dozens of shipments tied to Rami in 2012 and 2013. At first, intelligence leaders thought it was an old batch, but the weapons had serial numbers from post-2016. That meant someone was producing or moving weapons under Rami's brand after he supposedly died. A few months later, similar rifles were found in Yemen, then Somalia, then Libya. Each time, they carried the same symbol and used the same encrypted buyer network Rami had once controlled. It was too exact, too clean, too familiar. If this was a copycat, it was someone with inside knowledge. But if it wasn't a copycat, then Rami was alive. By 2018, multiple agencies had reopened their Rami files, but quietly. No public alerts, no Interpol notices. It was all done in secret, behind closed doors, under new code names. The CIA formed a new desk called Unit R-17, working directly under Deputy Director Samira Clark, with limited oversight. MI6 created Project Atlas, pulling retired specialists back into service. The DGSE set up a backchannel with Libyan informants. Mossad planted cyberbots across darknet arms forums, scanning for transaction patterns tied to old Rami contacts. In Abuja, NIA moved Major Nwosu to a secure analysis role. She was now reading every weapons shipment intercepted across West Africa. A new theory took shape. Rami had faked his death, using the raid as a smokescreen to go underground and rebuild his network. But no one knew where, or who he was now. That changed with a single photo, blurry, low resolution, but impossible to ignore. It came from a traffic camera in Varna, Bulgaria. In October 2018, a man in a gray trench coat crossed a narrow road toward a black Mercedes. He wore sunglasses, but his face turned just enough for the camera to catch a glimpse. A sharp nose, high cheekbones, a long scar under the left eye. The image was flagged by Mossad's face-matching system during a random sweep. A special unit under Agent Yitzhak Marini ran it against archived Rami photos. The match came back at 84%, high enough to warrant attention. The photo was sent to MI6 and the CIA. They both agreed. The face was older, maybe 50 now. His hair was thinner. But the eyes, cold, calculating, familiar, hadn't changed. A quiet message was sent across 5 networks. Target may be alive. Resume low visibility tracking. Do not alert local authorities. Rami the ghost had appeared again. And this time, they might not get another chance. After the photo from Varna surfaced, attention turned not just to where Rami might be now, but to who he really was. Most arms dealers leave a trail. They start as smugglers, military defectors, or ex-soldiers turned criminals. But Rami had no clear beginning. No real name. No birth record. No school history. He appeared in files for the first time around 2004, when weapons from a secret port in Ukraine were traced to a rebel group in Central Africa. The name tied to the cargo was Khalid Rami, but the passport number was fake. An early CIA memo described him as a shadow broker, someone who moved guns, ammo, and explosives across borders without being seen. Some believed he was once a mercenary who fought in the Yugoslav wars. Others claimed he was trained by a foreign intelligence service. But nothing could be proven. He came from nowhere and stayed invisible. Over time, intelligence files from MI6, CIA, and Interpol showed a pattern in how Rami worked. He never met clients face-to-face unless he had to. Orders were placed through encrypted apps and passed through at least 3 different shell companies. His weapons didn't come from one place. They came from old Soviet stockpiles, stolen UN shipments, and covert deals with corrupt generals. He used shipping routes through Djibouti, Karachi, and the Black Sea, hiding weapons inside containers marked as food or medical supplies. In one case, a French Navy scan of a cargo ship revealed rocket launchers hidden inside crates of onions. His clients were often warlords, terrorist leaders, or private militias, like the Lord's Resistance Army, ISIS-linked groups in Libya, and drug militias in Colombia. But Rami didn't pick sides. He sold to whoever paid more. The only thing he seemed loyal to was profit. One of the reasons Rami was so hard to catch was because no one could say exactly what he looked like. There were 5 confirmed photos of him between 2005 and 2011, but they looked like 5 different men. In each one, the hair color, skin tone, even the shape of the ears were slightly different. That led to a theory shared in a German BND intelligence report. Rami had undergone facial surgery at least twice, likely in Belgrade and Dubai, to change his appearance. Another agent from Mossad, Yarel Ben-Tov, said in a 2017 interview, his voice on tape never matched. Sometimes low, sometimes hoarse, sometimes with a Russian accent. I think he used vocal tech or trained himself to sound different. Public sightings were rare. He never used phones directly and avoided places with security cameras. Even when he attended arms expos, he wore fake facial hair and left within minutes. The weapons Rami sold were not just deadly, they changed the balance of power in whole regions. In 2008, a civil town in South Sudan was bombed by a militia that had no aircraft 2 weeks earlier. The weapons used were Soviet-made mortars and portable launchers, traced back to a freighter that had passed through Port Sudan under a false flag. That shipment was tied to Rami. In 2010, a massacre in northern Nigeria was carried out by a group called the Desert Vultures, who used laser-guided rifles supplied only months before. Survivors described the weapons as new, silent, and fast. One mother, Amina Lawal, told journalists, "They came with guns we had never seen. One shot destroyed 3 people." Intelligence officers later connected the weapons to a warehouse Rami once controlled in Tunisia. Everywhere his network touched, death followed. Towns vanished. Governments collapsed. And no one knew who to blame, because no one could find him. In interviews collected from 2014 to 2018, agents and survivors gave chilling accounts of Rami's reach. Colonel Isaac Mbatha, a South African arms investigator, once said, "Rami is not a man, he's a market. If you shut one door, he opens another." Survivors from Mali to Syria described receiving crates of weapons in the night, dropped from trucks that drove off without headlights. One smuggler, caught in Albania, said during questioning, "You never see the man. Only his money." Even tech experts had run-ins with his network. Dr. Natalie Chun, a UN cybercrime analyst, said Rami's server trails would disappear seconds after being pinged. "It's like chasing a ghost with a candle," she said. Others believed Rami had insiders in at least 4 governments, which explained how he always stayed one step ahead. A former DGSE field officer, Julian Marceau, called him a human virus. He moves, adapts, survives, and you never know where he will appear next. As agencies built profiles over the years, they found that Rami had used at least 9 different names across different countries. These included Khalid Rami, Mikhail Drago, Adel Badr, Samir Costa, and Rahman Noor, among others. Each name came with a realistic passport, matching IDs, and even fake backstories. One of his identities included a college degree from a University of Lisbon and tax records in Portugal dating back 10 years. Another showed military service in the Russian army, though no such record existed. Rami often used shell companies as shields, firms with names like Eastline Security, Balkan Trade Corp, or Falcon Shipping Group. These companies registered in tax havens like Cyprus, Panama, and the British Virgin Islands. Some of the addresses were real buildings. Others led to empty lots. It was like trying to trap smoke in a jar. Every time someone got close, the trail went cold, and another name popped up somewhere else. Even his closest network wasn't safe from him. Several of Rami's former middlemen died mysteriously. One man, Farouk Jibril, who worked on port logistics in Morocco, died in a car crash that investigators called unusual. The brakes were cut. Another fixer, Dusan Petrovic from Serbia, was found in a hotel room with signs of poisoning. No suspects were ever arrested. An internal MI6 report read, "Rami does not clean up, he erases." No voice recordings of him have ever been released to the public. No full videos exist. He never left a personal email or text. In 15 years of global crime tracking, Rami's file remained the only high-level dossier without a single confirmed biometric ID. The phrase ghost arms dealer wasn't just a nickname, it became the only way people could describe him. To most of the world, he was just a whisper. But for those who knew, he was the man behind the war. By 2019, many intelligence analysts had stopped believing that Rami was ever gone. The weapons being found in conflict zones matched his style too closely. The old shell companies had started reactivating. A payment network last seen in 2014 had lit up again in Romania and Oman. And the strange part? A few of the identities thought to be dead were suddenly active again, applying for visas, moving money, even booking flights. That's when the theory came back: Rami never left. He simply changed his name again. One Mossad analyst put it best: you're not looking for one man. You're looking for 10 masks. But there's only one face behind them all. The photo from Bulgaria only made the theory stronger. He was alive. He had adapted. And worse, he had returned just as the world thought he was gone for good. By early 2019, whispers began to rise once again in quiet intelligence circles. There were no major attacks. No major shipments intercepted. No new wars started overnight. But something felt familiar. In different parts of the world, from Tangier to Belgrade, little signs started showing up. A man with a forged Canadian passport had rented a beach villa in Croatia under the name Romanian, a name already tied to Rami's old list of identities. Another alert came from Cyprus, where someone tried to buy an abandoned oil warehouse using documents connected to a man officially declared dead. These weren't major crimes, but the details were strange. All the names linked back to deceased individuals, most of them small-time businessmen or people who had died abroad. Payments were always made in crypto, and the phone numbers used were temporary burner lines. These signs didn't mean much alone, but together, they told a new story. One tip stood out more than the others. It came from Romania, from a rideshare driver named Cristian Voicu, who had been working near the private airstrip in Constanța, close to the Black Sea. Cristian wasn't a police officer or a trained spy. He was just a normal man in his late 30s, trying to earn extra money for his daughter's school fees. On a quiet Thursday afternoon in March, Cristian received a ride request from an unknown app, not the usual ones he worked with. It offered double the pay for a short, 25-minute trip. The pickup point was Hangar 6, an area usually reserved for private jets. Cristian didn't ask many questions. Jobs were slow that week, and money was tight. But what started as a regular pickup quickly turned into the ride he would never forget, a ride that would bring him into the shadows of one of the world's most dangerous men. When Cristian pulled up to the hangar, everything felt too quiet. A single black SUV was parked nearby. No guards, no airport staff. A tall man stepped out, dressed in a long dark coat and wearing sunglasses, even though the sun was already setting. He didn't speak at first. He opened the back door and got in without a word. The ride app said the destination was a location near the Dobrogea forest, but it had no street address, just GPS coordinates. As Cristian started driving, the man finally spoke. His voice was low, with a slight Eastern European accent. He asked Cristian to avoid the main roads and take the longer forest route. Cristian hesitated, but the man calmly placed a thick wad of euro notes on the armrest. No questions, he said. He didn't carry any bags. No phone. Not even a watch. Just him, the coat, and a calm silence that made Cristian uneasy. During the ride, Cristian kept glancing at the mirror. Something didn't feel right. The man was too calm. He didn't fidget, didn't look around. Just stared out the window. Cristian tried to start a conversation, but the man responded with short, empty replies. His hands were clean, but the knuckles were scarred. He wore no jewelry, but there was a faint burn mark near his right ear. The air in the car felt heavy. As they neared the forest road, the man leaned forward slightly and said, "You will stop exactly at the gate. Don't wait." Cristian nodded nervously. He didn't know what kind of job this was, but he wasn't about to argue. When they arrived at the gate, Cristian saw a large metal fence, at least 3 meters high, with black security cameras facing the road. The gates opened automatically. No guards came out. The man stepped out, turned once, and handed Cristian another stack of cash. Cristian drove off quickly, heart pounding. He didn't want to get involved, but something about the man kept playing in his mind. The scar under the eye, the triangle-shaped pin on his coat, and the way he never looked nervous, not even once. Cristian thought about the stories he'd seen on the news, especially the one about the arms dealer who vanished after a failed raid. He tried to shake it off, but his mind wouldn't let go. When he got home, he decided to do something unusual. He pulled the dashcam memory card from his car and copied the footage. The man hadn't asked him to delete anything, but Cristian didn't feel safe. 2 days later, he contacted a local police station, not to report a crime, but just to say, something strange happened. You might want to see this. At first, no one took it seriously, until they watched the video. The dashcam footage showed everything: the hangar, the ride, the man's quiet face. Investigators watched it 3 times before anyone spoke. One officer, Detective Elena Dumitrescu, paused the video and whispered, "That's him. That's the ghost." She sent the file to Interpol's European Command. Within 12 hours, it reached the hands of Mossad, MI6, and the CIA's Unit R-17, the same team that had reopened Rami's file a year before. A group of analysts ran facial recognition scans. The results were not perfect, but the match came back at 82%, high enough to make everyone stop what they were doing. The scar under the eye, the way the man walked, even the earlobe shape matched old images of Rami. He looked older, maybe in his early 50s now, with deeper wrinkles and a thinner face. But the cold eyes were the same. The man in the video was not just a random passenger. The investigation moved fast after that. The first thing they checked was the name used to book the ride, Yasin Belkacem. It seemed like a common enough name in North Africa, but when Interpol pulled the record, they were shocked. Yasin Belkacem was a Moroccan national who had died in 2015. Official records showed he was killed in a road accident near Tangier, and the death certificate had been verified by both Moroccan and Spanish authorities. That made one thing clear: the name was stolen. Whoever booked the ride had used the ID of a dead man. This wasn't just identity theft, it was a classic move from Rami's old playbook. He had done this before in Ukraine, Greece, and Bahrain. It was one of his favorite tactics: take the name of someone already gone, update the passport with modern features, and use it only once. Then vanish again. It was never the same name twice. But Cristian had remembered more than just the man's face. He also remembered the drop-off point, the gated estate near the Dobrogea forest. The exact GPS coordinates were still in his phone. When agents checked satellite maps, they found something odd. There was no registered building at that location. But the satellite images told a different story. There was clearly a large structure hidden among the trees, with roads leading in and out. The property was fenced, the roof was metal, and several heat signatures showed up on infrared scans. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide the building. No property tax records. No construction permits. Not even a mailing address. Romanian officials tried to investigate quietly, but by the time they arrived days later, the gates were shut tight, and the security system had been disabled. There were no vehicles, no people, and no fingerprints. Whoever had been there was now gone. Still, the footage and information Cristian gave had already done something important. It reopened the hunt. For the first time in 3 years, intelligence agencies had a living witness, a face, and a location. Even though the trail had gone cold again, the pieces were finally lining up. A man using a dead Moroccan's identity had entered Europe through private air travel. He had paid in cash. He was dropped at a hidden estate with advanced security, and his face matched the most wanted arms dealer in modern history. From this point, the case stopped being a cold file sitting on a shelf. Now it was an active global investigation. Teams were reassigned. Files were reopened. Surveillance systems across Eastern Europe were activated. And one name began to circulate again in quiet conversations between agents, military officers, and intelligence directors. Rami. Not a ghost. Not a rumor. A man, alive, moving, and dangerously close. Before the strange ride in 2019, Cristian Voicu had never been involved in anything more serious than a flat tire or a late customer. He was 38 years old, a father of one, and had worked as a private driver for 5 years in Constanța, Romania. He was quiet, polite, and never looked for trouble. Most days, he worked long hours and drove tourists to and from the beach. He lived in a small apartment with his daughter Mara, and spent his nights helping her with homework. Cristian didn't drink, didn't gamble, and didn't talk much about politics. He had no military training, no special knowledge of spy work. He had never even left the country. The man he picked up from Hangar 6 was, to him, just another client. Strange, yes, but not someone he expected to change his life. At the time, Cristian had no idea that he had just picked up a ghost. After Cristian gave the dashcam footage to the local police, it sat on a shelf for 2 days. Most officers thought it was a waste of time. One even joked, "What, are we chasing secret agents now?" But Detective Elena Dumitrescu decided to check the GPS file out of curiosity. When she loaded the data, she saw something strange. The drop-off point was listed as a location near Dobrogea Forest, but the system showed no known street address. She ran the coordinates through the police system and found nothing. So she contacted Interpol Bucharest, who forwarded it to Mossad and MI6, already on alert after the dashcam photo was flagged. Within 48 hours, agents from Unit R-17, a CIA task force, confirmed that the man Cristian had driven closely matched Rami. Cristian's footage became a central part of a secret investigation. He had accidentally found himself in the middle of a hunt for one of the world's most wanted men. After the footage was confirmed, 2 investigators came to meet Cristian in person. They didn't wear uniforms or introduce themselves with full names. One said he was from European Joint Task Force 6, and the other said she was from intelligence services. They brought photos, GPS maps, and printed stills from the video. Cristian answered every question honestly. He remembered more than he had written down. He said the car smelled strange after the ride, not like cologne or food, but like gun oil. He also noticed that the man wore a ring on his left hand, a black metal band with 3 silver lines going around it. Cristian thought it looked expensive, but not flashy. He remembered the man speaking softly on the phone for a few seconds during the ride, in a language he couldn't recognize. The man didn't say much, but Cristian heard faint radio static and what sounded like coded instructions in the background. The agents listening to Cristian took notes without reacting, but in their private report, they marked the ring as important. Rami had been photographed once before, in 2008, outside a black market expo in Montenegro, wearing a similar black ring on his left hand. The gun oil scent also made sense. Rami was known to personally inspect weapons before delivery. And the soft phone call with radio static was another clue. In past investigations, his teams used shortwave encrypted radios to avoid mobile phone tracking. Every detail Cristian gave lined up. After the interview, he was asked if he would be willing to speak to a larger team. He said yes, as long as his identity was protected. He didn't want to be on TV or the news. His only worry was for his daughter. He agreed to give a full statement, but only under complete anonymity. The investigators promised to protect him. Cristian's full statement was recorded in a secure location. He described everything: the time, the hangar, the voice, the route, the estate. A sketch artist worked with him to create a drawing of the passenger. The image wasn't perfect, but it helped confirm features already seen in the dashcam footage. Cristian also shared the exact GPS pin from his phone. This led agents to launch a quiet aerial scan of the estate, and though no action was taken immediately, the location was added to a growing list of safe houses believed to be tied to Rami. After the interview, Cristian returned home and tried to go back to his normal life. But things had changed. He felt like someone was watching him. At night, he thought he heard footsteps outside. His phone started acting strange, freezing for no reason. Once, he returned home and found the door slightly open, though nothing was stolen. 5 days later, Cristian's fear became real. He returned home from a long shift and saw his living room in disarray. Drawers were pulled out. Couch cushions were sliced open. His laptop was missing, along with a memory card from his dashcam. Nothing else was taken, no jewelry, no money, not even his passport. He called the police, but when they arrived, the report was marked as targeted intrusion, no forced entry. The door lock had been picked cleanly, almost professionally. Cristian told Detective Dumitrescu what had happened. She immediately alerted the intelligence team. They instructed Cristian to switch phones, avoid patterns, and not speak to anyone about the case, even friends. Cristian was terrified. He knew he had only spoken to the police. That meant someone on the outside had known. Either someone had leaked his name, or he had been followed the day of the ride. The warning was clear: stay quiet. The next day, Cristian stopped answering his phone. He missed a scheduled follow-up call with the investigators. His daughter was staying with her grandmother that week, so no one raised alarm right away. But by the end of the second day, people started to worry. Cristian's car, a gray Volkswagen Passat, was found parked near an empty lot 12 kilometers from his home. The car was locked, but the seat was pushed back and the glove box was open. His wallet was still inside, untouched. There was no sign of struggle, no broken windows, and no blood. But Cristian was gone. Calls to his phone went straight to voicemail. The phone itself was later found dumped in a nearby trash bin, the SIM card missing. It was like he had vanished. The news didn't make headlines. There was no official statement. Only the people working the case knew what had likely happened, and none of them were surprised. Later that week, investigators requested security footage from nearby buildings around Cristian's neighborhood. One camera, mounted outside a hardware shop, had a partial view of Cristian's apartment entrance. The footage was grainy, but at 2:47 a.m., just one day after his home was broken into, a tall man was seen walking past the building. He wore a black coat, a dark cap, and gloves. He looked up once, straight at the camera, before turning the corner. But it wasn't his face that shocked the analysts. It was his hand. In a single frame, as he adjusted his coat, the camera caught a close shot of his left hand. On his finger was a black ring with 3 silver lines, the same kind Cristian had described. The footage was sent to Interpol. A special analyst noted, possible match to known associate or Rami himself. That clip was the last known connection to Cristian before he disappeared completely. Cristian's disappearance became a turning point. Before him, the case was built on theories, past crimes, and blurry photos. After him, it became personal. The investigators now believed Rami knew someone was watching, and had acted to protect his secret. Cristian was not a criminal. He was not a spy. He had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. And now, he was missing. Some believed he had been silenced. Others hoped he had gone into hiding. But there was no proof of either. Without a body, there was no crime. Without a witness, there was no trial. But one thing was clear: Rami, or someone close to him, had moved fast. He had erased the driver just as easily as he had erased others before. And if Rami was willing to do that to a civilian, what would he do if he knew the full weight of the world was hunting him? Days after Cristian Voicu vanished, the Romanian authorities finally decided to move on the estate he had dropped the mysterious man at. They knew it could be dangerous. The location was too quiet, too private, and completely hidden from public records. The estate had no official owner, no tax documents, and no city permits. It was just there, surrounded by thick trees and steel gates, deep in the Dobrogea forest. The police were joined by a special operations team from European Joint Task Force 6, wearing body armor and moving with caution. The team waited until sunrise before breaching the front gates using a silent cutting tool. Drones flew overhead. The air was still. They stormed the building with rifles raised, expecting guards or booby traps. But no one was there. What they found instead was far more shocking. The house was not just a home. It was a carefully built fortress, made for hiding secrets. Inside the house, every detail felt wrong. From the outside, it looked like a rich man's private villa: large windows, clean driveway, and a garden full of trimmed hedges. But the moment they stepped in, the mood changed. The main hallway was lined with black soundproof panels, the kind used in underground music studios or panic rooms. The floors were polished, but the air smelled like oil and burned plastic. Doors were not made of wood, they were steel reinforced, each with digital locks and coated panels. Some walls had thermal insulation, blocking heat signals from satellites. Several rooms had foreign electronics with Cyrillic and Arabic markings. The team found hidden cameras, a signal jammer, and a radio signal interceptor used to listen to nearby police and military frequencies. The building was not a home. It was a command center. Someone had spent millions to make it look ordinary, but nothing inside was normal. As the team searched room by room, they found a locked study that required 2 codes to open. Inside were several black suitcases, neatly stacked and sealed. When opened, they revealed forged passports from 6 different countries: Russia, France, Greece, Canada, Algeria, and Turkey. Each passport had a different name, but they all used the same photo, with minor differences in facial hair, hairstyle, and skin tone. Alongside the passports were forged driver's licenses, untraceable SIM cards, and a pile of cash ledgers showing large transfers to offshore banks. The amounts were massive, hundreds of thousands of euros, dollars, and Swiss francs moved through fake companies every month. Each company name sounded real: Eastbridge Holdings, Global Secure Transport, Vega Marine Services. But none existed in the official database. These were all ghost accounts, a financial web designed to move money without leaving a fingerprint. And at the center of it all was the same name, Rami. In the basement, a narrow corridor led to a hidden room behind a false wall. It had no doorknob, no visible lock, just a flat surface that opened only when a hidden latch was pulled behind a bookshelf. Inside, the air was cold. The walls were lined with metal shelves, each holding unregistered weapons, handguns, sniper rifles, and compact explosives with the serial numbers filed off. On one table sat 3 external hard drives, marked only with numbers. They were encrypted, but one technician noted they used the same custom coding system seen in past Rami operations. In the far corner of the room, agents found a locked steel case filled with bundles of cash, euros, US dollars, and gold bars, all stacked neatly in plastic wraps. None of it was marked or traceable. It was a criminal's treasure chest, a perfect example of how someone could run a silent empire from the shadows. But that wasn't all. In the upstairs office, someone found a small drawer under a desk, easily missed unless you were looking closely. Inside was a boat license, printed in Greek. The name on the license was Adel Badr, one of the known aliases tied to Rami. The license belonged to a yacht named Alestria, supposedly docked in a private marina near Athens. At first, they thought it was just another fake. But when they contacted Greek port authorities, they were shocked to learn the boat did exist. It had been registered under the name Alestria 2 years ago and had moved between private ports along the Mediterranean coast, from Greece to Tunisia, then to Sicily, and back again. The person who registered the boat had never appeared in person. All contact was done through lawyers. The photo used on the license was slightly different, but experts believed it was Rami, just with a trimmed beard and sunglasses. While other officers continued searching, one forensic expert was collecting samples from the kitchen. On a small wooden table, there was a teacup with fresh lipstick stains. The tea inside was cold, but still recent. They tested the cup for DNA. Days later, the results came back. The sample was a 95% match to partial DNA recovered from a Rami-controlled safe house in Morocco in 2014. It was the first physical confirmation in 5 years that Rami had been in the house. The forensic report noted that the DNA showed slight aging, confirming he was still alive, still active, and still moving. That one teacup, carelessly left behind, became the strongest piece of evidence the world had ever had linking Rami to a real place and time. But it also raised a chilling question. If he was so careful, why did he leave it? Was it a mistake? Or was it a warning? In the master bedroom, a second hidden compartment was found, behind a mirror. Inside was a small box of personal items, a pair of sunglasses, a broken watch, and a photograph folded twice. The photo showed 3 people standing on a boat, a man, a woman, and a young boy. The man in the center was unmistakably Rami, smiling with his arm around the woman. The woman looked Eastern European, with light hair and sharp eyes. The boy looked no older than 10, wearing a red jacket and holding a small toy. Investigators scanned the photo into their system. Within hours, a match came back. The child had been listed in an Interpol missing persons report from Belarus, dated 2017. His name was Nikita Sokolov, taken from his home along with his mother during a late-night break-in. That case had gone cold, until now. The boy in the photo was Nikita, and Rami had been with him. The discovery of the photo stunned everyone involved. Rami had always worked alone, distant, secretive, without attachments. But now, there was proof he had been traveling with a woman and a child. The woman had not been identified yet, but some believed she might be Nikita's mother. Others feared she was another victim, forced to live under Rami's control. Either way, it changed the investigation completely. Now, it wasn't just about weapons or money. There were missing people involved, possibly kidnapped, possibly held against their will. The photo showed them on a boat, and the water in the background matched the coastal cliffs near Tunis. That meant the image was likely taken in North Africa, sometime in the last 2 years. The timestamp had been scratched off, but analysts estimated it was recent. The boy looked only slightly older than he had in the Belarus report. That meant he was still out there. The raid on the house proved more than anyone expected. It showed that Rami had not just survived, he had thrived. He had built a base, created new identities, and moved money without being seen. He had a boat, weapons, and possibly even people under his control. The soundproof walls, the forged documents, and the hard drives all pointed to someone still running a complex operation. But more than anything, it showed that he had grown bolder. Leaving a photo behind was not like him. Neither was using a name already linked to his past. Investigators began to wonder, was he slipping? Or was he sending a message? Either way, the house in Dobrogia was no longer just a place. It had become a crime scene, a symbol, and a warning. Rami was alive, and now the world had proof. But catching him? That would be another story. 3 weeks after the mansion in Dobrogia was raided, a quiet morning in Switzerland turned into one of the biggest moments in modern law enforcement history. At a small border checkpoint near Lugano, Swiss officers were performing random stops. It was a routine inspection, nothing special. A black SUV approached the checkpoint. Inside were 2 men. One drove, the other sat in the back, silent, holding a small leather bag. The officers asked for identification. The driver handed over a passport from Portugal. The passenger, calm and collected, handed over his passport from Greece, in the name Dimitris Costa. The border officer scanned it. The system paused. A small flag popped up, ID anomaly detected. Secondary check required. The officer looked at the man. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. The officer asked him to step out of the vehicle for a fingerprint scan. The man nodded once and got out. He did not resist. Not even a little. The scanner took only a few seconds. The machine beeped, and the screen flashed red. A match had been found in Interpol's high-security database. The man in front of them was not Dimitris Costa. He was Rami, the ghost arms dealer wanted by at least 9 countries for weapons trafficking, identity fraud, and suspected involvement in multiple civil conflicts. The officers didn't panic. They had trained for high-risk captures. One officer asked for his real name. Rami simply looked at him, smiled faintly, and said, "You already know." That was all he said. He allowed himself to be handcuffed without argument. He had no weapons, no phone, and no panic. For a man who had disappeared for years, he looked strangely prepared to be caught. News of his arrest was not released right away. Swiss intelligence quietly contacted Interpol, who then informed the CIA, MI6, and Mossad. Rami was no longer a ghost. He was now a prisoner. Once the arrest was confirmed, the world reacted fast. Within hours, media outlets across Europe broke the story. Rami captured in Swiss border stop, read one headline. Ghost arms dealer arrested after years on the run, said another. The United Nations released an official statement thanking Swiss authorities for their role and promising full cooperation with the ongoing investigation. Countries like Nigeria, France, and Greece reopened old case files tied to Rami's network. Families of victims from past attacks held vigils. In South Sudan, where weapons linked to Rami were used in village bombings, people gathered in prayer. One mother, Amina Lawal, who lost 2 sons in a rebel raid, said on live TV, "We waited. We prayed. Now maybe there will be justice." Protesters in several cities carried photos of war-torn towns, saying, "This is what his guns did." For the first time, victims had a face to point to. The man behind so much pain had finally been unmasked. Back in Switzerland, Rami was placed in a high-security detention center under constant surveillance. He refused to speak. His lawyers requested silence. But investigators didn't need him to talk. Not yet. The raid on the Dobrogea estate had provided everything they needed. With access to the banking ledgers, passport files, and hard drives, agencies worked together to trace his recent activities. Evidence tied him to over 30 new black market arms deals in just the last 2 years. Weapons sold through his network had ended up in Yemen, Libya, Sudan, and parts of eastern Ukraine. Payments had moved through ghost companies and fake names, all tied back to the hidden room in his Romanian mansion. Every transaction was a clue. Every clue was a link. They could now prove that Rami had been fully active even while believed dead. His operation had never stopped. It had just gone quiet and smarter. But the most important discovery came when investigators dug deeper into the people found in the photograph. In the raid, officers had recovered a photo showing Rami, a woman, and a boy standing on a boat. The woman's face was run through facial recognition software. It matched a woman named Natalia Sokolova, a Belarusian language professor who had gone missing in 2017 along with her son. The boy, Nikita, had been 10 at the time. The Belarusian government had filed a missing persons report, but the case had gone cold. Now the photo proved they had not just vanished, they had been with Rami. But why? Natalia had no criminal background. She had never been involved in arms, politics, or intelligence. Some believed she had been kidnapped. Others thought she had been forced to help Rami with translation and communication for his international deals. As for the boy, no one knew if he was safe, or if he was even still alive. The photo was sent to Belarusian authorities, who reopened their own investigation. Meanwhile, Interpol began cross-checking Rami's known movements with past surveillance of Natalia's last location. Security footage from Vilnius, Lithuania, in 2017 showed a man matching Rami's build meeting her in a bookstore. That was the last confirmed sighting. From there, the trail went cold. Now, with Rami in custody, the search for the missing mother and son began again. Agents hoped that questioning Rami would bring answers. But he still said nothing. Not about Natalia. Not about the boy. Not about the weapons. He spent his time in silence, reading books and staring at the wall. He didn't ask for special meals or phone calls. He simply waited. But investigators weren't done. During their search of the estate, they had also recovered a leather-bound journal from a locked desk drawer. Inside were codes, scribbled notes, and something far more chilling, a list. This list was titled Risks. Under it were about a dozen names. Some were aliases tied to past arms buyers. Others were unknown. But one name stood out clearly, Cristian Voicu, the Romanian driver who had dropped Rami off weeks earlier. The same man who had turned in dashcam footage and later vanished. The list showed that Rami had been tracking anyone who came too close. Cristian's name had been marked with a red X. Below it were notes in shorthand, which intelligence analysts translated as "footage exists. Action required." This was no accident. Cristian had not just disappeared. He had been targeted. The journal proved it. It was now clear that Rami didn't just avoid being found. He removed people who became a problem. Cristian had been added to a private hit list. And that confirmed something terrifying. Rami hadn't just been hiding. He had been hunting, cleaning up anything that could lead back to him. The journal pages were shared across intelligence networks. Other names were matched to low-level dealers and suspected informants who had recently gone missing. Some were believed to have been killed. Others were never found. The pattern was clear. Rami had built his own system of silence. If someone spoke, they vanished. If someone looked too closely, they were erased. And now that he was finally caught, investigators realized how much damage he had done while invisible. He had run an empire of violence, crossed borders without detection, moved millions without leaving a trace, and destroyed lives without showing his face. But now, he was behind bars. His journal, his house, his boat, his money, all found. The ghost was real, and the world now knew it. But even in a cell, Rami remained calm. No panic. No fear. When asked by his lawyer what he planned to do next, Rami only replied, "Wait." 3 months after Rami's arrest, the courtroom in Geneva, Switzerland, was packed with journalists, officials, and families from around the world. The man known to the world only as Rami was finally about to be tried under his real name, Dragan Vukojevic. For years, he had lived behind fake passports and false identities. But now the truth had come out. Records uncovered by European intelligence proved that he was once a field officer with the Serbian Military Intelligence Agency, trained during the Balkan conflicts. After leaving the agency, he vanished from all government records. That's when his life as a black market arms dealer began. He used his training to build a criminal empire. Now, that empire had fallen. As the trial began, he entered the courtroom wearing a dark gray suit. His hands were cuffed. His face was calm. The room went silent as the judge read out the charges. The trial of the century had begun. Over the course of 5 weeks, witnesses from 6 different countries were brought forward to testify. Some spoke about the weapons he had sold. Others described the villages and towns destroyed because of his deals. A man from South Sudan showed photos of his destroyed home. A woman from Libya cried as she described the night her husband was killed by a rebel group using Rami's weapons. But one piece of the story remained unsolved. The woman in the photo, Natalia Sokolova, the Belarusian professor, was still missing. No one had seen her since 2017. Her name was mentioned several times during the trial, but no answers were given. However, her son Nikita had been found. Authorities located him in a private boarding school in southern France, placed there under a fake identity. Once the photo was made public, a teacher recognized him and called the police. The boy was safe, and now in government protection. The courtroom also heard testimony about the Romanian driver, Cristian Voicu. His name was listed as a key witness, but he never appeared. Investigators shared the details of his disappearance and the evidence found in Rami's seized journal. The audience listened quietly as the prosecutors explained how Cristian's name had been marked as a risk and was later crossed out with a red X. Photos of Cristian, his car, and his last known location were shown on screen. His body was never found. No one could say for certain what had happened to him, but the clues made it clear. He had helped lead authorities to Rami, and he had paid the price. Cristian's family sat quietly in the back row of the courtroom. His mother wiped away tears as the prosecutors called her son a hero. Though he never lived to see it, Cristian had helped bring the world's most wanted arms dealer to justice. The most surprising moment came in week 3 of the trial, when a new witness was called to the stand. Her name was Lara Vukojevic, Rami's daughter. Her name had never been made public before. For years, she had been known only as the quiet young woman who traveled with him. Many believed she was just a companion or assistant. But now it was confirmed she was his biological daughter. Lara stepped into the courtroom and sat in the witness box, wearing a plain black dress and no makeup. Her voice was soft but clear. She told the court that her father had raised her in a world of lies, constantly moving, changing names, and hiding the truth. From the age of 12, she was trained to help him forge documents, open bank accounts, and play the role of his fake wife in public to avoid suspicion. She said she never truly understood what he was doing until she was much older. Lara's words left the courtroom in silence. She described how, in some countries, she had to call him husband instead of father. She said that he taught her not to trust anyone, not even the people they worked with. Her testimony revealed how deep his plans had gone. She said he had no friends, no real emotions, only missions. Laura told the court that when she finally realized the truth, she was too afraid to leave. He said we were always being watched. That if I ever left, they'd find me and kill me, she said. When asked why she came forward now, she answered, "Because I have nothing left to fear." As she stepped down from the witness box, she looked at her father once. He did not look back. He sat still, eyes fixed ahead, not blinking, not nodding. He never said a word about her during the entire trial, not even when she broke down in tears. Through the whole process, Rami, or Dragan, as he was now officially known, showed no emotion. He listened carefully to each charge, each witness, each photograph. But his face never changed. He didn't cry. He didn't laugh. He didn't deny anything. When asked by the judge if he had anything to say to the victims' families, he paused for several seconds, then said, "No," the courtroom gasped. There was no apology, no explanation, no regret. Some believed he was trying to show strength. Others thought he simply didn't care. The families of victims watched him with cold eyes. Many of them had waited years to see him caught. And now he sat before them, a man who had once ruled a secret empire, now just another prisoner. But even behind bars, some still feared him. His silence made them wonder what else he knew, and what he might still have planned. On the final day of the trial, the judge read the sentence: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The courtroom clapped. Reporters outside cheered. Victims' families hugged each other. The ghost had been captured, unmasked, and punished. As guards led Rami out of the courtroom, a journalist standing nearby swore she heard him whisper, "I'll disappear again." No one else heard it. It wasn't recorded, but the words stayed with her. Was it just pride? A joke? Or a warning? No one could say for sure. All that mattered now was that justice had been served. Rami was no longer in hiding. The face behind years of war and bloodshed was finally known. His weapons were seized. His money frozen. His names exposed. But in the shadows of global crime, silence never lasts for long. Just because one man falls doesn't mean the game ends. Somewhere, others were watching, and waiting to take his place. 6 months after the trial ended, reports began to surface from Southeast Asia. Arms shipments were moving again, fast, clean, and invisible. New clients were receiving weapons from a group that didn't have a name. The shipments were traced back to routes once used by Rami's old network. Intelligence officers grew concerned. The deals were happening in the Philippines, Myanmar, and the southern coast of Thailand. In one intercepted message, a code phrase was found that matched a string used by Rami 10 years earlier. Investigators dismissed it as coincidence, until a surveillance camera near a coastal warehouse in Batam, Indonesia, captured footage of a man inspecting crates. His face was blurred. His walk was slow. He wore a dark coat and gloves. The camera angle was poor, but one detail was clear. On his left hand was a black ring with 3 silver lines, the same ring worn by Rami. A new ghost had entered the game.